Senator Cornyn.
Mr. Secretary, I want to expand a little bit on the question that Senator Barrasso raised about Venezuelan oil. But primarily what I want to do is focus on something that's come to be known as the shadow fleet or ghost fleet of Russian and Iranian oil that's been used, that's subject to sanctions, which has, with the complicity of Venezuela, been used to evade sanctions to help fund the Russian war against Ukraine and help Iran remain the #1 state sponsor of international terrorism and fund its proxies, which have been responsible for so much death and misery in the Middle East. So it strikes me that Venezuela, even though it has a lot of oil, has been more involved in trying to assist its allies, namely Iran and Russia, in circumventing these sanctions to help them fund their nefarious activities, both in the Middle East and in Ukraine. But obviously, they're also a source of additional energy, which is needed by China. Can you help us understand that better? And is the law enforcement operation to arrest Nicolas Maduro and the current status of our engagement with Venezuela helping us deal with that ghost fleet or the evasion of sanctions?
Yeah, on the first point, on the second point, absolutely it's helping us deal with it because it's a complex situation to describe. The oil in Venezuela we all think is under the control of one entity, and some of it is, but you literally have a place in which certain individuals, the glue that held the regime together was corruption and graft. Like people said, I'm supportive of this regime, and they didn't, not because they like Nicolas Maduro, but because Nicolas Maduro set up a system that guaranteed them a profit. Some people were making that profit from drugs. Some of them were making it from stealing money from their food program called CLAP. Some of them were making their money from an oil field that was literally given to them in exchange for buying them their loyalty. Some were making their profits from all three, and other activities. So there's no doubt that his removal has created the conditions to begin to move away from that. That's why we sanction their oil. The ghost fleet exists for the following reason. When something is sanctioned, when we say it is illegal for them to move this oil, none of the traditional legitimate tankers will carry that oil. They won't touch it because they don't want to be sanctioned by the United States. So you have to turn to these pirates. You have to basically turn to these ships that are either falsely flagged, meaning they're flying the flag of Liberia, but they don't really have a Liberian flag, or are stateless in their capacity. And they have to turn to them, and they turn to these vessels. And these vessels are made up with crews from all over the world. We seized one where the majority of the crew members were Ukrainian. We've seized others, the majority of them are Russians, and a mix, and what have you. And so what's happened is a lot of this oil is going, a lot of this shadow fleet oil is going even outside the PDVSA system. And those are the ones that we have now been seizing as well as the ones that are involved outside the PDVSA system. Our goal is to rope all of this illegal oil into a channel that goes into this account that ultimately goes to the benefit of the Venezuelan people. This is an interim step. This is not the way we want the oil industry to look like in perpetuity. This is simply a way to provide revenue so that there isn't systemic collapse while we work through this recovery and transition phases. So there's no doubt that when Maduro was there, we had no cooperation on any of this. Zero cooperation. But I will tell you this. Since the time Maduro was removed, not a single illegal ship has headed towards Venezuela. And the ones that you hear us seizing are all the legacy ones that took off or have been seized in the past. So we have got a really good handle on this as a result of it. And what's really changed is the dynamic that the Venezuelan interim authorities are now actually helping us identify shadow fleet ships that they want us to seize and feed into this new interim mechanism.
So let me turn to Iran. Obviously, the president authorized a strike against their Iranian nuclear program, and what I consider to be a magnificent demonstration of American military power. And even though the arrest of Nicolas Maduro was not primarily a military operation, but they provided the support to law enforcement authorities as they executed an arrest warrant against Nicolas Maduro. Likewise, I think most Americans were very proud of how the U.S. Government and particularly the U.S. military have performed. But I know the president's very concerned about what's happening to the demonstrators in Iran. And of course, there's some estimates that as many as 30,000 Iranian demonstrators have been executed by the regime. But I know the president's being presented with a range of options. We notice a lot of movement into the region by our Navy and other authorities. But what happens if the supreme leader is removed in Iran? What happens next?
Well, that's an open question. I mean, no one knows who would take over. Obviously, their system is divided between the supreme leader and the IRGC that responds directly to him. And then you've got these, quasi-elected individuals, the ones that wear the suits on television who are part of their political branches, but ultimately have to run everything they do by the supreme leader. So I don't think anyone can give you a simple answer as to what happens next in Iran if the supreme leader and the regime were to fall, other than the hope that there would be some ability to have somebody within their systems that you could work towards a similar transition. I would imagine it would be even far more complex than the one we're describing now, because you're talking about a regime that's in place for a very long time. So that's going to require a lot of careful thinking if that eventuality ever presents itself. On the issue of our presence in the region, here's the baseline I want to set for everybody. The baseline is this. We have 30 to 40,000 American troops stationed across 8 or 9 facilities in that region. All are within the reach, theoretically, not theoretically, in reality, all are within the reach of an array of thousands of Iranian one-way UAVs and Iranian short-term ballistic missiles, short-range ballistic missiles that threaten our troop presence. We have to have enough force and power in the region, just on a baseline, to defend against that possibility. That at some point, as a result of something, the Iranian regime decides to strike at our troop presence in the region. The president always reserves the preemptive defensive option. In essence, if we have indications that, in fact, they're going to attack our troops in the region, to defend our personnel in the region. We also have security agreements, the Defense of Israel Plan and others, that require us to have a force posture in the region to defend against that. And so I think it's wise and prudent to have a force posture within the region that could respond and potentially, not necessarily what's going to happen, but if necessary, preemptively prevent the attack against thousands of American servicemen and other facilities in the region and our allies. I hope it doesn't come to that. But that's, I think, what you're seeing now, is the ability to posture assets in the region to defend against what could be an Iranian threat against our personnel. They certainly have the capability to do it because they've amassed thousands and thousands of ballistic missiles that they've built. Despite the fact that their economy's collapsing, they keep spending money on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.